So, if you analyze the transits for May 2026, especially for USA, which is treated as a Leo ascendant because of that 1776 declaration of USA. So, this particular transits mainly showing this Mars Saturn conjunction in the 8th house of USA horoscope. So the 8th house Pisces having this Mars and Saturn conjunction. So the 8th house governs sudden upheavals, secrets, and mass transformations. So having both Mars, which is energy, aggression, and Saturn, which is restriction and karma, in Pisces, a watery sign, so can represent some hidden tensions or boiling issues beneath the surface. And you can also observe the Pisces is a kind of a big ocean. If you compare Cancer with some ponds and small lakes, and Scorpio is a bit heavily watery sign, and then Pisces is a much more bigger watery sign. So in that sense, Pisces is a kind of a big ocean, can be represented with a big ocean. So the tensions around ocean, because Saturn and Mars are of course in conjunction with in conjunction in the sign of Pisces, which is a heavy watery sign. And especially, see, Mars is only in Pisces at the very beginning of May. It moves into Aries on May 11th, 2026. So I would see this impact. While Mars is in the 8th house with Saturn, there is a signature of friction. However, once Mars moves into Aries, the 9th house, it enters in its own sign, which typically shifts the energy from some hidden volatility to some active defense or some ideological debates. And but till 11th May, I can see there is a heavy friction in this oceanic regions. And also Rahu is transiting in Aquarius, which is a 7th house for Leo ascendant. That is, Leo ascendant is of course, it is USA. So Rahu in the 7th house, which is transiting in the 7th house, which generally represents the partnerships with different countries and also the open enemies. So it suggests some unpredictable foreign relations and some kind of unconventional alliances. So this particular transit of Rahu often indicates a period where the enemy is not clearly defined, or you can say where diplomatic treaties are tested by some sudden technological or psychological uh, you know psychological patterns or psychological behaviors rather than some direct physical strikes. Now you may think the Saturn and Mars are transiting in the 8th house of 8th house with respect to Leo ascendant. So you might be thinking there would be a kind of hidden attack or a very big attack, you may predict. But see, these transits are objectively very heavy. Definitely these are heavy. Astrological patterns rarely point to a single catastrophic event like a very very big attack in USA. But what I can see here is similar heavy transits in the 8th house have occurred many times in history for USA without resulting in a very very big attacks. Usually these indicate some financial restructuring, some kind of legislative shifts, or some internal purging of old systems. And in May 2026, even Jupiter is transiting Gemini, the 11th house for Leo, which acts as a kind of protective shield here. And Jupiter in the 11th often brings gains through networking and international cooperation, or potentially tempering the more aggressive influences of Mars and Saturn, I can say. So there is no immediate big problem for USA, but there are some problems because in 8th house the energy of Saturn and Mars are basically they are creating some kind of problems. Like Saturn is clearly indicating some structural changes to debt, taxes and national security, and Mars is clearly showing some initial tension, especially until 11th May, followed by a focus on some legal or foreign policy. And Rahu, which is transiting the 7th house Aquarius, is showing some unconventional diplomacy or focus on some tech based threats or tech based, technology based alliances. Jupiter is it seems to be the savior here, because it is transiting the 11th house. So potential, it has the potential, this Jupiter has the potential for some diplomatic breakthroughs and economic stabilization as well. But still the 7th and 8th house are really worrisome for USA. So here the Vedic astrology suggests a period of high stakes diplomacy and internal transformation, rather than a very big attack on USA. So the 8th house transit is more likely to manifest as some national housekeeping kind of pattern, or it is mainly dealing with some hidden debts. The debt system of USA is very much highlighted here, and based on that some kind of reforms can be expected in May itself. And with respect to the current tensions of Iran, Israel, right, with respect to that, if I try to predict for USA, this particular Mars, Saturn in 8th house and then Rahu in the 7th house, the alignment of the current Iran-Israel tensions with the USA's May 2026 transits creates, it's a kind of explosive signature, we have to say, because when you add a Leo ascendant chart for the USA into the mix, the focus shifts from a general global threat to some specific operational risks for the country. Because this combination, Saturn and Mars, is a kind of explosive combination. They are basically the biggest enemies, the Mars and Saturn. So the first 10 days of May, Mars and Saturn are in conjunction in Pisces, that is the USA's 8th house. So in mundane astrology, this is often termed as a kind of Vispotaka yoga, means a kind of explosive combination, you can say. So a combination that indicates some explosive energy. So this, obviously it is suggesting that as a kind of there's a negative side of Iran-Israel conflict reaches a peak. For the USA, the 8th house represents the intelligence and secret operations. So we can expect some reports of cyber warfare or covert operations, or especially the submarine and naval tensions. These, because Pisces is a watery sign, as we discussed, it cannot be a public or full scale nuclear or launch or some very big attack, but definitely the submarine and naval tensions you can expect, and the focus is on the Navy now, because Pisces rules the oceans. So the USA's naval presence in the Persian Gulf, right, this particular area, there we can see some kind of problems in the first 10 days of May. And Mars moving into Aries on 11th May. So on 11th May, Mars leaves this particular 8th house, the restrictive 8th house, and enters the 9th house of Aries for USA, which is its own sign and Mars becomes much more powerful. So the USA likely shifts from wait and see or a kind of covert pattern to a very aggressive or overt military stance from 11th May onwards. So the ninth house represents international law and long distance travel as well. So this particular transit of Mars moving to Aries on 11th May, this particular transit points to the USA drawing a line in the sand kind of energy. Something like it's potentially, it's this particular ninth house can be a kind of massive deployment or a formal declaration of support that changes the momentum of the existing Iran-Israel conflict. So definitely 11th May 2026 onwards, you can see USA can become much more aggressive. And the Rahu in Aquarius, which is the 7th house, is the 7th house of war here. So Rahu is the planet of smoke, it's the planet of mirrors and unconventionality. So in the 7th house, which is the open enemies and partnerships of a particular country, it suggests that the enemy is not just a nation but a decentralized threat can be suggested here. So the tension with Iran may not manifest as a traditional battlefield war. Instead, the USA will likely face some kind of unconventional warfare. Can be proxy attacks or a kind of high-tech disruptions to the energy grid. So because Rahu is that unconventional warfare. So Rahu in Aquarius is a sign ruled by Saturn or Uranus, and it points specifically to a technology and aerospace being used as weapons. So the first 10 days of this war, Iran, USA and Israel is in one pattern, and from 11th May onwards it takes a different pattern. And the 8th house, where a Saturn is sitting, also rules other people's money, right? 8th house is other people's money basically. And national debt, while it is aspecting the 2nd house of the national treasury. So the 2nd and 8th house, this axis. So there's a pattern of economic fallout here. So even if a physical, a very big attack is avoided, but still astrologically the attack can happen on the US dollar or the oil prices for sure. So the conflict in the Middle East during these transits will likely trigger a sharp spike in energy costs for sure in the first 10 days of May. It creates a shock to the US economy for sure. The US economy will get a shock very soon in the first 10 days of May that feels as disruptive as a kind of a physical strike. And I would see the May 1st to 10th, Mars, Saturn in 8th. That's a kind of hidden danger period for USA. It's a high risk of naval incidents, mainly the sea or the ocean, right, where they are Hormuz and all, that particular area, the submarine based tensions near that Iran-Israel is very much evident. May 1st May to 10th May, and 11th May to 31st, you can see Mars in 9th only. Is a kind of the USA takes a bold, decisive leadership role here. From 11th May onwards, it may become very, very aggressive as a potential. This particular 11th May to 31st May has the potential for large scale military mobilization. And the 7th house, of course, is for USA, Rahu is transiting, so the conflict is fought through some kind of drones or cyber attacks and some kind of unconventional tactics. So USA is under focus. It is under focus throughout the month of May. So the planetary heat is is undeniably, I would say it's high. The transit suggests a surgical and technological escalation, uh, definitely for USA. And yes, USA is going to pay very heavy price in economic stability. Saturn is of course in the 8th house. As long as Saturn is in the 8th house, yes, USA is going to pay a very, very high price, heavy price for whatever it has done so far. Thanks for watching this video.